My pastor tried to sleep with me.
Mm.
I do have to give you a backstory so you can understand the severity of this situation. This did not happen at my current church. This happened maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. For
Okay.
obvious reasons, I couldn't speak about it then. It's too fresh, and I honestly was going to keep it to myself outside of anybody else that went to the church from finding out, especially his children. His wife is my mother's cousin. What does that make us? Cousins, I guess? Cousin-in-laws? I don't know. But he was family. I don't just mean like a mere relative. Like, this is someone who we went to the beach with, we would go out to eat with. His children were super close to me and my siblings. We were heavily in the church. So we saw him and his family all the time. So to dive a little deeper, my mom is a minister. So outside of whenever he would preach, let's say he had to go preach at another church or maybe was out of town or was sick, that's when my mother would step in and she would preach in his place.
Right.
He grew up in the church probably like 5 to 6 days a week, from choir rehearsal to praise dance to Bible study to church outside the walls. We even did Bible study outside of church, and she like planted a very deep, heavy seed of faith into me and my siblings.
Okay. Well, I have to say this, first of all. This story is insane. Right off the bat, it's crazy. You should know, however, guys, we have a lot of heavy topics today. So hope you have your coffee in hand. The coffee is strong in this episode. So in the first segment here, we have a woman who's exposing a pastor for cheating. Millions of views on this video that are definitely going to affect his whole pastoral career. I don't know if he's still preaching. If this gets out, of course, I'm curious to know what you think. Let's get back into it.
Her and my father, and I obviously thank God for that, because that is one of the main reasons why I was able to develop a real relationship with Jesus now. Suddenly, one day, we just up and left the church. This pastor met me when I was like 7, 8 years old. So he's known me since I was a little girl. He baptized me. Him and my father were at one point sort of kind of like best friends. I had to explain that part so you can see how sick he is. If there's anybody watching this video that knows me in real life and grew up with me, obviously you know what pastor that I'm talking about. I don't know how far this video is going to get. I don't know if this video is going to get a lot of views. I don't know. But in the event that it does, I'm not sorry for saying any of this at all.
It already did.
I do apologize to his children, because I know that this is probably the first time that you're hearing about this. I'm not going to say his name, obviously, or put any pictures or anything like that. Let's continue. Now that you have the backstory, again, this was like 4 or 5 years ago. At the time this happened, I was like 20 years old, and I'm 25 now. This was around the time where OF was getting really popular. It wasn't exactly popular yet for what it's known for.
Wait. How did OF just enter the chat? The story's getting wild.
But it was around that time where it was getting there. When it comes to certain situations, I look at things for what they are and not what they are portrayed to be. Looking on there, of course, OF doesn't promote itself as that type of app. So when I made it, this was around the time I was heavily chasing my music career. If you know me, you know I used to rap and sing and all of that stuff. And I was heavily trying to pursue being a rapper and a singer. I was deep into my music career, like really trying to thrive and make a living off of it. When I saw OF, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is a perfect outlet to put all of my behind the scenes content on here, exclusive music videos, photo shoots, never before seen photos or unedited photos from my photo shoots. I had this whole big plan to put all of that stuff that I didn't normally share with my supporters or my Instagram followers on there. That is what I was using OF for. I promise you, that was it, and that was all.
Okay, so obviously we're all shocked about the OF entering this conversation, because we all know OF is not just used for that particular reason, behind the scenes, photo shoots, this and that. But I have heard, to give her some credit, I have heard that other people use OF in different ways, right? I've heard it. Let's keep listening.
So on my Facebook, only my family is on there. There may be a few of my friends or associates or people I went to high school with, but for the most part, it was only like family members. I posted the OF link on there, and I specifically put in the caption, what was on there. So just thinking about that, even if I was doing that type of OF content, why on God's green earth would I post it on Facebook for my entire family to see? If I was doing that type of content, obviously I'm not going to put it on Facebook. I get
Fair
this
point.
Facebook message from my pastor. He's
All right.
like, oh, like, wow, like you have an OF. And I was like, yeah, you know, I'm posting all of my music videos. I had a music video that I had just shot that I didn't release yet. I was giving like my supporters and like my family and stuff a first look at that music video. None of my music videos were explicit or anything. Yes, I was definitely cursing and stuff, but none of my music videos had nothing crazy in it. So then I get a new subscriber. My family, they're really, really good about supporting my music. This was not uncommon. I didn't find this weird. I was actually like, oh my gosh, I'm getting another subscriber. There was only like 5 things on there. The music video and like the behind the scenes of that music video.
Bro, don't tell me the pastor subscribed to her OF, bro. Don't tell me the pastor subscribed to her OF, bro. Let me not find out this is where this is headed.
So he liked all of them. And then he inboxed me and he said, oh, I have a question. And I was like, yeah, what's up? And he was like, is this the only content that you post on there? And I was like, well, that's all the content I have on there for now. I'm getting ready to post some other behind the scenes from this other photo shoot that I just did. So I don't know when I'm going to upload it, but I'm going to upload that on there soon. Then I'm also shooting another music video soon, and that's going to be up there as well. So I tell him that, and he was like, oh, okay, that's it, LOL. And I was like, yeah. Mind you, I did not know that OF was turning into a P app. I was completely oblivious to it. And not only that, it was still on the rise. Like, it wasn't predominantly that yet. And if it was, I had no clue because I'm not into that type of stuff.
So she says she's 25. That was around like 2020, right? OF was kind of, it was in the rise at that point.
I'm reading his message like, yeah, that's it. Like, what do you mean? I'm thinking he's about to give suggestions about other type of music content that I could put on there or something like that. But he comes out and say like, oh, you ever thought about doing any other type of content for her? And I was like, any other type of content like what? At this point, I'm starting to say, surely he's not talking about that. Surely he's not talking about that. There's no way he's talking about that. So I'm just in denial right now because like I said, he is in the family. This man watched me grow up. And my siblings and him and my daddy at one point was like this. Also, like I said, we did up and stop going to this church out of nowhere. And we joined a different church. My parents, they never told us why. They never told us what happened. We kind of knew something happened, but they never told us why we stopped going. Remember that? Because it's going to be important later. It was like, LOL, you know what content I'm talking about. Nobody wants to see the content that you have on there now. Like, who's going to subscribe to see that? So I'm like, I didn't know how to respond, but at the same time, I didn't want to run with a narrative where I think he's talking about something and maybe he's not. So I didn't accuse him of anything. I just left the message alone. I didn't respond to it. Then he double texted me like an hour later and he said, oh, I could pay you for the type of content that I want to see. Right there, I'm like, he's definitely talking about what I think he's talking about.
Right. This is where I get a temperature check, guys. Comment down below if you, okay. Because I think a lot of you are thinking, okay, I already know where Chisha's going to go with this. You might be surprised by my take. I'm more curious to know what you guys think down below. Right off the bat, how believable does this sound to you? Because I'll be honest, to me personally, and this is a personal stance, I believe this shit, bro. I believe the story wholeheartedly, almost. You may be asking, Chisha, there's a bit of bias there because you can't wholeheartedly believe this. The amount of stories that I have personally witnessed when it comes to churches and the pastors and how these pastors have crossed the line is uncomfortable. Plain uncomfortable. I've heard story after story. And if you've been in the church, you know this too. You know this. We know this isn't new. And part of me kind of wonders, because this is my perspective, my honest perspective. You know what? I'm going to save that for after we're done here because we're almost done. She's almost done giving her side of the story. You're allowed to disagree, man. That's the awesome thing about the coffee pod. You can say, bro, I don't believe it. Listen, I lean towards believing this story for sure. Some of these pastors are freaks, should not be up there pastoring anyone, in my opinion. But of course, guys, I'm curious to know, you're honest. Just keep it real in the comment section down below and tell me what you think. Right? This story's getting wild.
I still wasn't running with it because I didn't have proof. He didn't come out and say that. And if anything got out, I knew that he could deny it. Because back then, the church folk that he had surrounding him were like diehard churchgoers who would back him up to the ends of the earth. If I ever would have came out with this, I would have had to have severe, concrete audio and video proof of this. That's
right.
How deep they was going for him. I'm like, what type of content are you talking about? And then he says, I want to see you naked.
Oh, when I get my sound effects back, I'm not going to overdo it, but I will. I'm missing it. You guys know. You just hear it in your head. It played in my head. What in the world is going on with these churches?
Literally said, did you mean to send me this? And he was like, yeah, LOL. And I was like, do you know who this is? This is Blank's daughter. I said my father's name. He was like, yeah, I know who this is. I know who this is, LOL. Like, I just want to see some content of X, Y, and Z. He then started being descriptive with the type of content he wanted to see, and even made an offer to see me in person. And so I was like, so you know that this is Blank's daughter? And he says, yeah. And I was like, this is Shawnee, like little Shawnee. Right. And he was like, yeah, I know you is. You ain't no little girl no more, LOL. I immediately called my father. Immediately called my parents. And when I got them on the phone, I was crying. Because I'm like, there's just no way that this man who's supposed to be family, who literally saw me grow up, like, dude, like, you baptized me and my siblings. You were in my house. I used to spend the night at his house with his daughter. I'm like, wow, like, you really is a creep. Both of my parents was livid, but they also had this side in their voice where they weren't surprised. I was like, why kind of sound like y'all not that surprised? Like, of course they was extremely mad, but they wasn't that, like, surprised. We're still talking on the phone, and I go back to the messages because I'm like, oh, nah, I need to show them proof. Of course, the messages are gone. All you see is everything he ever said unsent. I had no proof, but of course, my daddy and my parents, you know, they believed me. Of course, they're not those type of parents. They believed me. That's when I got the explanation on why we really left the church.
So that's the last part of the video there. Now, there's a part 2 to this. We're going to check out some of these comments that I know are going to be crazy. Before we do that, I'm going to give you my honest take. I tend to lean towards believing this story. Again, I've seen this plenty of times. Now, I know we're going to get the comments of, this isn't you, this has been going on. But I personally also believe that this is getting a whole lot worse. Especially nowadays, when you have more women in the church than ever and less men, more men in the church who are, because this is what happens, right? Pastors would do this. And you heard how she said her parents reacted in a way of that was more casual, where they kind of sighed. Why? Because there were probably rumors that the man was kind of a creep. Most churches have heard rumors of a pastor doing this. And I'm not talking about, oh, it's just a rumor, nobody knows. No. I remember one specific church. I actually attended this church. I wasn't a consistent member to the church at all, but I attended it once in a while. I had found out that they forgave the guy, the pastor in the church, for doing the same thing. Now, this is different. The guy I'm talking about, who's pastor in the church, actually followed through. And he was married at the time. And he actually ended up smashing one of the chicks who was in the church. So what do? They decided to show grace and forgive. Hey, okay, cool. I disagreed with that. More on that later. And when I say I disagreed with that, that was me hearing how the situation played out later on. I wasn't there, right? I'm hearing about this church. I'm like, okay, interesting. He does it again, right? He does it again, not with somebody in the pews. This time it was with a female pastor, a fellow pastor. Not only does he do it again, he gets her pregnant. Oh my goodness. That was a bitter cup of coffee for the whole congregation to drink. And my controversial stance when it comes to this point is I personally believe that there's some struggles the pastor shouldn't have. I'm sorry. I'm not asking for perfection here, but if I'm going to attend a church, and I haven't had a church that I attend consistently in a while, but I don't want this to be the struggle that, hey, do you know that this pastor struggles with the clapping fellow members' cheeks? Like, can that not be the struggle? And while this might sound crazy to people who hear this, I think we can put this in other occupations. And I'm not calling the pastoral position just any other occupation, but let's be honest here. No one wants a pilot who has a history of drinking too much and DUIs. No, thank you. This is why you probably can't. And I'm almost certain here. I'm assuming that if you have had a DUI, maybe they forgive you after some time. But if you've had a DUI recently, you probably aren't able to do something like Uber. There's certain struggles, again, that I just don't want somebody in a certain position to struggle with heavily. Now, that doesn't mean that the people in the audience are, you should go and be a freak. No. But I do think that what's the saying? Come off a bit cheesy, but with great power comes great responsibility. I am consistently amazed at people who want so bad to lead the flock and take a position where, they're leading people and sharing the scripture and pastoring a church when they're struggling with stuff like this. You feel me? Do I make sense to anybody? Please comment down below if you agree, which is why, by the way, I was raised in a Christian home. And if you were raised in a Christian household and went to church regularly, wonderful things. Every mother has that dream of like, you're going to be a pastor. I was like, not me. And it's not because I didn't think it was a worthy position or cause. No, it's because I was thinking like, I don't think that I would suit that position because of the responsibility it came with. I don't want it. And at some point, and I used to think, if you pray for that, then God's going to give you that. So you better, your mind starts playing tricks on you. But I just personally think it's crazy how much people play with that position. And I've seen it so many times. And I can only imagine how often it happens now, seeing as how desperate a lot of these chicks are of marriage. Just desperate, to find a husband. And, that pastor is in a position of power. So they look up to him. There's already that weird dynamic going on. Yeah, man, I just don't think people respect that position as much. I'm a sinner, and I'm not saying I try to sin, but I don't need anybody looking up to me as a way, like, follow my path. No. Mistakes are made here just like every other human being, right? Let's check out a few of these comments and see what people have to say. Of course, guys, I'm curious to know. Don't forget to leave your thoughts down below. Top comment says, no background story needed. I believe you immediately. Somebody else here says, screenshot. I know she said that she couldn't go back and actually find those messages. I don't know if the Wayback Machine is still a real thing, but you could still get some of that stuff back. Somebody else who says the way people idolize pastors is an issue. Pastors are humans. They are fallible. This is so disappointing to hear, but not surprising. This is true. I'm not saying the pastors, by the way, I'm not saying that they should be perfect. That is not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that. I'm sure the pastors get tempted with this all the time. I'm talking about the type of situation that she just outlined, right? The type of situation where that this has been going on and other people know that this is something that the pastor struggles with. I've seen this countless times and people are kind of like, well, Let's show grace. Let's forgive. And then he claps some more cheeks. Then what? Then what? My main point isn't to say that pastors should be perfect. It's to say that I think needs to be a more strict qualification, and somebody maybe needs to step down if they cross that line, right? Because then you have an environment where men won't take that guy seriously. I'm looking for somebody to pray for me. You know what I mean? So I don't go out here and look for some cheeks. Do you understand? Let's read a few more comments here. Somebody else says, what is OF? Wow. Good for you. Here's another person who says, background story. Babe, you won us with the intro. Somebody else who says, pastors, ministers, etc. are people. The church view of them is unhealthy. That view has allowed many of their issues/sins to go unaddressed. That's an interesting perspective. And so because they don't look at them as people, then they don't want to address it because it's like, oh no, I don't want to ruin his reputation. Nah. And a lot of people don't know that the whole structure of the way church is done today is really man-made, right? If you look at the early church, they met in groups of people. Church wasn't a structural building. It was groups of people coming together to worship. People have church all the time without knowing it. Somebody else who says, wow, a priest stalked me 25 years ago. I should gain some strength and tell that story. Somebody else here added, I didn't need the backstory, babe. I believe you. Stat. Here's another person who says, praying for everyone hurt by him. You are brave for sharing your truth. So in all honesty here, unless he actually did do something with somebody else, he didn't actually commit a crime, technically speaking, based on the story that she outlined. Now, let's talk about the weirdness in all this. Watching her growing up and doing all that puts him in the category of like potentially a lot sicker than he might have been in this situation. Doesn't sound like anything came of it. She said, hey, we left. So from this story alone, because here's why I say this, right? People will say, why doesn't she go press criminal charges? She didn't say she was essayed. I guess if she wanted to be loose with that translation, she could say that, but it doesn't sound like that's it, right? What would be lost there is reputation, which is justifiable if you ask me. All right, guys, that's it. Listen, of course, I'm curious to know what you guys think. I was going to do the part 2 thing. Let me know if you guys want the part 2. I'll include it in a different video. Let's move on to the next topic. All right, moving on. After this wife threatened to put her unborn child up for adoption, her husband disappeared and soon sent her divorce documents. No more wasting time. Let's get it.
Put a finger down if your husband ghosted you for 48 hours and you're financially reliant on him and you only had $13 yesterday and you texted him to give you some money and he literally just ignored you the entire day and you called him and you ignored him. He ignored you. And so then you went on his computer and you logged into his bank account to send yourself some money, because I usually don't have access to his bank accounts, but his computers were his passwords were saved on his computer, so I was able to get in and finally send myself some money. And then you still couldn't get in contact with him, and then he comes while you're not home and takes all of it, moves all his stuff out, and you still don't know where he is, and he's like literally missing from you, like you don't know, you basically got abandoned. And he moves his truck and everything, his car, to his dad's house, and you still don't know where he is, so you pull up to his dad's house at 1 a.m. Well, actually, I forgot to mention that finally at 7:59, his dad sent you money on Venmo, and then you show up at his dad's house at 1 a.m. and you ask to talk to him, and his dad says he's sleeping, try again tomorrow. And not to mention, he took the other dog, so now like your dog's lonely. And he's not legally allowed to do that because there's no separation in order. But anyway, so then you show up at his job this morning, like to finally, and ask him to talk. And he literally says, okay, like it's gonna be a minute. And so then you sit there and you wait. And he brings his manager over, and he literally says to you that it's a private matter, so it has to be handled outside of work. But you've been trying to contact him for 48 hours, and he says he'll get to you after work.
So it sounds like an explosive argument took place between her and her husband. And that argument resulted in him being completely done. That's what it sounds like to me. Guys, how did I know that she threatened to put their unborn child up for adoption. It comes in a later video. It's going to come. And this is why, like, you know, like she framed this in a way so that people automatically take her side. As you keep listening, you're going to realize this chick seems to have some serious problems, and she's online trying to start a content career because people feel bad. Why are you on here reacting to these sad women? They're posting videos of themselves. She's literally trying to benefit from her failing marriage and create an online presence off breaking up a family. Now, granted, these are two people participating in all this, right? But it sounds like that man is fed up. And listen to all wives out there. A man can only take so much stress, so much conflict, so much drama before he decides peace and being lonely. People talk about the loneliness epidemic of men today. Plenty of that is very true. But a portion of that are men who just don't want to deal with contentious and insufferable women who are going to drive them up the wall. So let's summarize a bit of what was said here. Number one, she says, put a finger down if your husband has ghosted you for the past 48 hours. So he ghosted her. He doesn't want any contact with her whatsoever. On top of that, she says she financially relies on him and only has $13 left to her name. There's a silver lining in that. There's some good news in that, is that that's enough for a good cup of coffee. Maybe 2, depending on where you go. Maybe 3 if you decide to make it yourself. Right? Then she goes on to say, you called him a bunch of times, so she's blowing up his phone. She went to the bank and logged in so she could transfer some money so she could get herself something to eat. Disrespecting the hand that feeds you is crazy. And then goes on to say, moved all his stuff out. Sounds like he's gone. And lastly, took the dogs and finally showed up to his work like a crazy chick. And they said, hey, this has to be handled outside of work. We're going to read a few comments here, then we're going to check out this next video. My question, of course, to you is, does this not sound like a man who's fed up? Top comment here says, give a man power to feed you. You give him the power to starve you. Interesting comment, some truth in it. We can talk more about that later. Somebody else here says, put a finger down if you would have cleared the bank account and changed your number. Okay, so of course, a lot of people responded back to this comment. Put them all down for this one. So of course, like the chicks are here like, yeah, clears bank account. Yeah, F him. Goes on to say, the way I know he's white. Is he? Is he? Somebody else responded back to that comment and says, did her aura really give black woman with a black man though? Oh shit. So I guess they're over here confirming that he's dating a white man, which I don't know why this is to some people when they hear that you're dating someone of the opposite race. You know, when I say that, I mean, like, if you're a black man dating a white woman, they're just like, F you, we don't care what you go through. If you're a black woman dating a white guy, they're like, oh, F you, we don't care what you go through. At the end of the day, man, don't let people to pick who you decide to give your love to build with. Okay, somebody else here says, young women seeing this, please get a job and have your own account. Never ever rely on a man and think this couldn't happen to you. Yeah. I mean, that's the vulnerability, right? In this type of dynamic that you set up. And I think it works. I don't want to say it doesn't work. It works for some people. I also do warn men and say, think very hard when it comes to you setting that type of dynamic. Because when you go to court, and what I've been told, more information for men who value marriage at fathershaverights.com. But when you go to court and they now want to figure out how things are going to go structurally going forward, what I've heard from the attorneys I've spoken to is they would typically honor the dynamic and economy that was set up in your home. Meaning what? Meaning your wife will get more money out of you if they look at her like a helpless woman who can't work. Even if she has a degree, yes, even if she did work 10 years ago, they want to sustain that dynamic. You may look at it as unfair. What's the justification? The justification is typically, we want to make sure that the turbulence is minimized for the child. Somebody else here says, if he's white, he's probably done fetishizing you, sis. Oh, he's, okay. So she's like, he's done fetishizing over you. It's over. Hopefully you sign a prenuptial agreement. Somebody else here says, getting abandoned as an adult is crazy. This female commenter says 100% relying on a man in 2025. All right, so let's check out this next video here.
Y'all are tearing me up in these comments. Like, I mean, I deserve it, but like, I have a plan. Like, let me cook. Shit. I just really had to like repeat the situation out loud because it's so childish that I cannot like fathom it. I had to crash out, process what was happening, like, and now I'm chill. Like, it's really not that big of a deal. I'm gonna take y'all's advice tomorrow after a good night's sleep. I always say I did it so you don't have to, so learn from this, you guys. I would go through this a million times over if it meant that I could stop somebody from going through this. Also, if you're in like a similar situation, you're gonna be okay. This too shall pass. Like, don't let boys be mean to you, ever. I don't understand why somebody would do this to like another human being, but I also like don't want to understand. I'm glad I don't understand. Shout out to everybody who has contacted me and offered to clean my litter box and just, you know, told me they were there for me. That really meant the world to me. Love you guys. Keep you updated.
I really do think that a lot of these stories would play out way differently if the man jumped in. Because, you know, when the man usually jumps in, you end up finding out stuff that you never expected in these type of situations. But then, you know, you have this, the chick telling her side of the story, and one channel named The Coffee Pod, and a few others who serve some coffee.
You guys have like a lot of statements that you're saying, and so I'm going to clear up some of that. Before I knew I was pregnant, I started a new job, and then I started feeling like super sick.
Okay.
And super tired, and I could not work anymore. Like, it was actually unbearable. If you've ever been the first trimester of pregnancy, you know what I'm talking about. That should be illegal to work during that time. Relying on him financially was literally supposed to be temporary. Never permanent. I'm not like that stupid. I'm a full-time student in college. No, I'm not getting rid of my baby. I've always wanted a baby. I've always wanted a child, so that's a no-no. You guys are literally so sweet. I put my Venmo and my Cash App in my bio because a lot of people were asking for it because they want to help me out.
That's should be red flag number one if you've been doubting the direction that this is headed. Venmo and Cash App in my bio. Help me pay for my divorce and court fees. We need to start something like this for men. You know, when a man's on here, and I know, man, we don't usually get on here and beg and cry because no sympathy for men. I get it. And I don't think men should. But I think once in a while, we just need to show some men, just a few men, some love. If I see it, I'll do it. Right? Even if it's a little bit, you know, to help finance. Because what she's asking for is finance to probably pay for court fees, attorneys, this and that. And of course, her video had millions of views. Chances of her getting that are high.
Like, thank you guys so much for like all your support and stuff. You guys are really helping me feel better, like genuinely. I'm not due until August, so a lot can happen in the time frame between now and August. So yeah.
Keep listening, keep watching. Hold your final conclusion.
Yo, I was literally so invested in the Bree and 2K situation, like their custody battle for baby Winter. I didn't know I was gonna be next. Twin him.
All right, so here we are. It was at this point I was like, nah, see, you're now trying to leverage this situation. And if you can do this, there's a reason your husband is trying to run very, 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 very fast away from you.
I wanted to start a podcast for almost a year now. Like, I have the name picked out and everything on Apple Podcasts and on YouTube. Like, I made a YouTube channel for it and I made an Apple Podcast channel for it, and I just never started it. This whole situation has really like lit a fire under my ass. Either that or second trimester, like, I'm having a lot of energy. Back to my podcast. It's called Pretty Hurts. And if you're really good at cover art or like kind of decent at cover art or graphic design, if you're good at graphic design and you want to make a cover for me, that would be great. And I would pay you probably not much right now, but when I'm up, I'll pay you more. I'll give you the rest when I'm up. I have to make a payment plan. I did.
Okay, so she says she has to make a payment plan for what? For people she wants to pay for the podcast that she's starting while her marriage is going up in literal flames in front of all our eyes. Now, think about that. Does that sound like somebody who's in a devastated situation? Does it? Granted, you could say, Chisha, maybe she's, getting herself together and there's really tears in the background. Cool. But somebody who's really, really trying to fix their marriage, they're not going online to expose their husband and their whole situation and trying to start a podcast from it. Guys, I may be wrong here, but please, it doesn't make sense.
I did speak with a lawyer. For those of you that have been wondering, if I can go through this while being pregnant, I can have a job. I have more interviews next week, so that's really good. I had an interview yesterday and it went really well. I scheduled a therapy appointment yesterday and the soonest available appointment was April 4th. So I hope, I put myself on the waiting list, so I hope something will maybe open up this week. I don't think I've been to therapy in almost 2 years. I'm really excited that my therapist was still working at the same place. Right now I'm learning how to sit with discomfort. Something else that this whole situation is highlighting is that I kind of lost my independence. Well, clearly, obviously, duh. I mean my personality outside of a relationship. I'm really enjoying getting back in tune with myself because I feel more like myself again. I feel mentally I was so discombobulated because I was neglecting myself so much. I have a taste of my old life. It's kind of bittersweet. Having one dog, my dog that I raised from a baby. It used to literally just be me and him, and I worked retail and I would come home to him and we would sleep together, and it was life was so simple for me. But
all right, so here's where a little bit of the truth starts to be revealed.
up until we were married, my parents gave me allowance every 2 weeks. People made fun of me for calling it allowance. That's funny. Once you get married, you leave your parents and you cleave to your husband. So that was my thought process.
Right.
He even told me that he wanted me to stop getting allowance because he wanted to provide for me as my husband.
Cool.
As a Christian, I'm okay, yeah, that makes sense. I thought we were on the same page. Turns out we were reading 2 different books.
All right, so listen, I don't know how old this chick is, but she says up until we're married, my parents gave me an allowance every 2 weeks. Red flag to me. Red flag to me. And this is why. I think in the day and age we're living in today, man, I think a lot of, and maybe they're just old school and don't realize this, but I don't think I would, as much as I want to raise up feminine women, I would want them also to know how to fend for themselves in case they would want to. I don't think there's any, especially today, not knowing what the future may hold when it comes to the culture of marriage. Of course, my goal is to raise up feminine daughters who are wives, but giving your daughter allowance up until the time she's married on a bi-weekly or weekly basis just seems enabling, if you ask me. Do you guys agree? Yes or no? The same way that I know when I have sons, because I know that women are turning into grown men out here. We just had a video of a chick who was bragging about how much she can squat. She was like, I can squat 250. Why don't I have a husband? I'm like, man, you would make the perfect husband for the women who are out here crying and looking for a man. Since I know that the rate of grown men out here in skirts is just accumulating. But listen, you guys see it all the time. More and more and more. Then my sons are going to know how to cook. They're going to know how to do all the things within the household that a woman does, because it might take them a while for them to look through the haystack to find hey, I think I got one, guys. Hey, come on. I think we found a wife. You guys understand? Let's see what people have to say to this one. I'm actually going to check out the comments for this one. Top comment here says, you need to stop posting. You're pissing me off. Like you're not this slow. And so why would the women who have experience in leaving men who they're married to say, yo, you need to stop posting online? Number one, they know that this probably isn't going to look good in court. When you're up there talking about your husband, your soon-to-be ex-husband, and you have a child on the way, which he probably wants custody of that child. He's probably going to fight for custody of that child. They'll just go through these videos. They'll just be like, hey, could you go search the Coffee Pod Chishizet on YouTube, please? Yeah, pull up that video, that one right there. And then the judge is going to say, oh, I know this channel. All right, so somebody responded back and says, girl, relax, what? Somebody else who says, he's likely taking her to court and she's posting all this online. Yeah, it's not going to work out. Here's somebody else who says, so basically your family sent you out into this world extremely naive. I agree. Somebody else who says, girl, you are too pretty for him. You got to love chicks. You got to love women, man. Haven't even seen them. And they mean this shit. You're too pretty for him. Like, you got to love women. Oh, shit. Somebody else who says, I know he is not the same color as us. Of course, here comes the color as this comment. Somebody else who says, for a white man, LMAO. Somebody else who says, girl, do not have that baby. Please do not. Your life will be a living hell. Take it from somebody who has watched my mom and some girlfriends go through it. Every single one of them said they would go back and change it if they could. You still have your entire life ahead of you to start over and do this right. So, of course, they're calling for her to delete her baby. Actually, I didn't read the comments from the previous videos, but if I go check out these comments, a lot of people are telling her right here, number one advice from a lawyer, stay off social media. Do not post. Like they're trying to tell her, hey, what are you doing? Right? Somebody else here was pretty much telling her, also, don't put him on the birth certificate. Somebody else who says, do not give the baby his last name. In all honesty, I probably should have gotten to this video a lot sooner. But regardless, this is when shit started to hit the fan for this chick. And she finally realized that her husband was in fact through, right? He served her divorce papers.
Here's the update that you guys have all been waiting for. I got served this morning. It's literally such a relief because now I don't have to wonder what the heck is going on. I understand a lot of legal terminology and I understand things from a legal standpoint, and I was literally giggling the whole time I was reading it. He's trying to file for a restraining order as well. A lot of people in my comments are saying that the person who files first usually is better off, but I disagree. I really truly believe that being able to read what the other person says, the reasoning for divorce is, gives you the upper hand. They put all of their points in the first time. So it's I have an answer for everything. You're gonna accuse me of misusing my prescribed medications. This is the goofiest. There's just so many things that are making me laugh. I cannot wait to do the response. He also put in there that I recommended or considered having or putting the kid up for adoption, which I think he tried to paint it so that they can sway his way. But
by the way, if you didn't hear it, because my editor is probably going to mute that right there. She says that in the divorce papers, he accused her of threatening to put their child up for adoption or getting the child deleted. So at that point, he probably was like, are you okay? Right? And listen, giggling about your divorce documents when you're setting yourself up for failure is crazy.
But I'm doing what's in the best interest for the child. It's already apparent to me that he's not thinking about the best interest of the child, he's thinking about the best interest of himself. Of course, I would love to keep my child. Obviously, I wouldn't have gotten pregnant if I didn't want a baby. I recommended that after I could not get in contact with you. Why would I want my child to grow up in a broken home? As a Christian, I would never want to child. I said something in the moment, in the heat of the moment. Ugh. Adoption should be a consideration. I just don't understand why you wouldn't consider adoption. If you're gonna do a restraining order against me, why would I want to put my kid through that? Mommy cannot come within a certain amount of feet of daddy. A restraining order for showing up at your job after I couldn't get in contact with you, and that's the only place I knew you would be. And I left peacefully after I was asked to leave. And I showed up at your father's house, and I left peacefully when I was asked to leave. How am I, what? To each their own, but yeah, why would I want to bring a kid into that? That's messed up. That's a
So you're going to put his child up for adoption?
Human being with a brain, a consciousness, feelings, emotions. Why would I bring them into this drama when we could both leave each other alone, put the baby up for adoption?
That's wild.
And they could have a family that is together and loving and parents who love each other and have the best possible chance at life. Oh, but I'm the bad guy because I don't want my kid to have to pack a bag halfway through the week and every freaking week. And a lot of y'all are telling me to tell my parents and stuff like that, but honestly, I'm an adult. I made an adult decision. Baby is my responsibility. My parents, I don't want to bring them into that. I just don't want to consume them with my drama. I'm not going to sit here and run to mommy and daddy. I do have that option, but I don't want to do that. I want to handle this as an adult. Yeah, it's just me and little Frankie against the world. I'm not actually naming him that for sure. Someone told me to name him Gus. Get out of my face. Having a baby boy, I'm carrying solo. That's definitely a boy. That wives' tale is like so true. They accuse me of misusing Lexapro. How do you misuse Lexapro? Life's about to get real good. I got a full night of sleep last night and I'm doing even better. I really needed that. I don't have like the knots of anxiety in my stomach anymore. I'm just excited to rebuild my life, meet my son, try to give him the best life that I possibly can. God provides a peace that surpasses all understanding. That's how I'm so just really grateful to be able to like start over. It feels like I'm starting over. It's just actually hilarious how someone can try to paint you as somebody who's going to be an awful mother, and like I don't know, it's just crazy how you can try to paint me that way when every person I've told said that I was going to be a good mother. Like I am literally textbook great mom in everybody's heads, and it's like it's all going to work out the way it's supposed to, and I know that God has my back.
God has all your backs, and I believe that. There will be tears shed. This is crazy. This is crazy. I mean, let's be honest. Any man who's in this situation, because what it sounds like is that there were threats. There were threats of, hey, I'm going to delete this child. I'm going to give this child up for adoption. I'm going to delete this child. Eventually, that man's going to start to question your state of mind, so on and so forth. You know, there does seem to be something going on here in that regard. And also, he said that she was abusing prescription medication, so on and so forth. It sounds like he's taken the proper steps to make sure that he tries to get custody of that child. Let's read a few comments here. Top comment says, it's giving Tracy Barbie. I'm sorry, someone had to say it. Somebody else who says something is off here. Yeah, somebody else says, how do you misuse Lexapro? Who trying to get high off Lexapro with the crying emoji. You remind me of Tracy Barbie. I don't know who that is. And here somebody else says, there's no way this is real. Definitely seems real. Or this is even more insidious, and this chick is some type of a psychopath who's making all this up, which would be insane.
I can't stop laughing because I got asked for child support. Penny, nickel, dime, penny, nickel, dime. Maybe because I'm blowing up on TikTok, you think I'm about to have some money out of nowhere? Child support. Oh, brother. Obviously, you can ask for child support right now, but like for after the baby's born. So basically, people are banking on my TikTok coin. I don't know if I'm flattered or disgusted. What gonna say? She banking on me on a bank. I smack her, she love to get spanked.
This doesn't sound like somebody who's devastated over what's actually happening here. I don't know, guys. You let me know. I don't know what that medication she mentioned actually does or what it's for. If you know, comment down below. And finally, I do think that this also highlights another area of frustration when it comes to the fact that men are expected to take full responsibility of children once they're born, which, by the way, I believe if you're out here creating children, you have a responsibility to take care of those kids, right? But follow me here. But at the same time, men don't have any say-so when it comes to that child and if that child will be brought into this world or not. And a woman can hang over the fact of, if you leave me, I'm giving this child up for adoption. It's kind of evil. Think about that. That's kind of evil to hold over a man who really wants to have time with his seed if it comes into this life. Very horrible, and why I think a lot of these child support laws should change. If a woman can relinquish herself as a responsibility of a child or just let go, then a man should have that right as well. Comment down below if you agree, and also let me know what you thought of this topic. Moving on.
This guy right here thought that his non-U.S. citizen wife was one of the good ones, and now regrets that he voted for Donald Trump. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a love story about Bradley Bartell, a Trump supporter, and his wife Camila, who was just deported.
Look at that title. It says he voted for Trump. Now his wife sits in an ICE detention center. Wow, this is just released. Look at that, March 16, 2025. Let's keep listening.
This is a love story that began in a small town in Wisconsin. You see, these two lovebirds, they were just having a grand old time until the United States immigration policies caught up to them.
Right.
They met through a mutual friend and had a first date at a local steakhouse. Married 2 years after that, and then they started to save up some money so that they could buy a house and perhaps have some kids. The love was so pure that Camila was taking care of Brad's 12-year-old son like it was her own. But last month, after Bradley and Camila were both returning from their honeymoon in Puerto Rico, the ICE agents rolled up on her and said, "Hey, we need to talk."
Okay.
"Are you an American citizen?" they asked. No, she said. "No, I'm not." She explained that she was from Peru, but she's not a problem because her and Brad had already started the paperwork process, since they were in the process of getting married, and that she's okay in the United States. Despite the fact that they knew Camila had overstayed her visa, they both wore their wedding rings for the flight home, believing that the United States government knew that she had applied for her green card. They believed this wouldn't be a problem because guess what? She was vetted from the start, was getting a W-2, and paid her taxes.
Right.
Before the agents led Camila away, she pulled off her wedding ring, afraid that they might confiscate it, and she shoved it into her backpack and handed it to Bradley. He looked at her, and he shook his head as she disappeared. He thought, "What the F did I do?" You see, what Camila and Bradley didn't understand, especially Bradley, is that when Donald Trump talked about doing these mass deportations, he had expanded it so that it also included immigrants whose application for legal status in this country was under review. Even those married or engaged to U.S. citizens are being detained. According to an immigration attorney, David Rozosk, anyone who isn't a legal permanent resident or a United States citizen is at risk, period. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, a love story that involves a Trump supporter and his wife, who's from another country, who were on their way to being happily married until he went out and voted for her to be deported. Yeah, Bradley, what the F did you do?
Interesting and highly nuanced situation here. So, guys, as you know, I actually enjoy reading my comments. So please leave your comments down below, your immediate reaction to this article that's titled, "Man Thought His Non-U.S. Citizen Wife Was One of the Good Ones, Regrets Vote for Trump After She Gets Swept Up by ICE." Comment down below. As you guys know, I don't typically address too many political issues until I see there's a mixture there of things we talk about here on this channel and politics. And I'm noticing that's starting to happen more and more. So I actually believe I may have a unique angle here when it comes to my perspective on this particular situation and other situations like this. But of course, guys, always excited to read your opinions. Here we go. First things first. When I hear the word illegal immigrant, there are two ways that processes differently in my mind. First off, understand that not every illegal immigrant is Hispanic, and not every Hispanic is an illegal immigrant. When I hear immigrant, I think of myself. I migrated here from Zambia. I was very young and have been raised here my whole life. I'm a U.S. citizen. And so I take a different perspective when I hear these stories. Here we have a man who found a wife with the intention of marrying her and making her a citizen, along with building a family, so on and so forth. We get it. So here we have a man who fell in love with a woman who's in the process of trying to figure out her status when it came to her citizenship here in the US, right? In all honesty, she was here illegally at the time that she met him. Now, there was a plan. There was a plan that after they get married, she would become a citizen. This avenue to citizenship is something that's very well known. People make jokes about this, right? When they talk about Africans, they'll be like, yeah, African dudes, they're out here looking for citizenship. So they want to marry a chick. We all know, nothing new. But here's the perspective I have. A lot of people, and this is a lot of immigrants in general, who are in this situation where they've outstayed their visitor's visa or student visa, they usually understand the gravity of the situation, right? They know that, okay, my end of stay is approaching. The amount of time that I can be here legally is approaching, and they usually have a decision to make. Guys, I'm telling you, this is how it goes. They either one can decide, hey, let me go back to my country and let that process continue. And after it's done, it might take 6 months or 5 years, right? That's the part that shocks people. It's like, how long will this take? It takes very long sometimes, and for some people, it's not so long. That's the gamble. And they know very well in a lot of cases, and I know a lot of people who've been in this situation. They have to sit there and think, what are the trade-offs here? Some people decide, hey, there are other people who decided to stay and maybe get married and get citizenship that way, especially if they're already in a relationship and they take that avenue. There are other people who decide, you know what, whether it's because they don't mind going back to settle in their country, or they're more conscientious and they're like, I don't want to feel like I'm breaking the law, they decide to leave. I know people who have left because they realize, like, hey, my time's running out here and I don't want to not be able to come back. So what happens if they catch you here illegally, even before the tightness when it came to border security, the state we're actually in right now with Trump in office? If you got caught in a situation where you outstayed your welcome, there's a possibility that you get sent back and you're not allowed to ever come back. So keep that in mind. I know somebody who decided to do it what people call the responsible way, right? To go back, and they came back and they're here now and they do not have anything to worry about. You got to put yourself in people's shoes, right? No one ever thought in history that there would come a time where they would look at, because you're thinking to yourself, millions of people are doing this. What would it hurt for me to do it? And there's millions of people. You'd never think there would be a time where they would go combing through every situation and there would be a border crisis to the point where they would come possibly looking for you. And here's the thing. One thing I don't like that people try to do is they try to act like there isn't and hasn't been an actual border crisis. There has been a border crisis. Both Biden and Trump have acknowledged addressing the border crisis in Biden's term and also in Trump's term. They had different ways of addressing that issue, but they acknowledged that there was a crisis. I do not think that any country should have open borders. I don't think that's my stance. If that's a controversial stance, then drink the coffee. When I say open borders, I'm talking about to the extent where things are chaotic and you're just not vetting people the right way and letting anybody in. And anyone can get in by hook or crook, and it doesn't matter. And so with that being said, when it comes to this situation in this couple, I think a lot of people who don't talk about these specific dynamics from a personal perspective, they usually try to present it like maybe the person didn't know. They knew most times. In most cases, those people kind of live on edge, right? Until their marriage is finalized. And there's some unfairness there. You know, you may say, well, how about the people who actually, the only difference was that they got married before the law changed? It just happened that way. It just happened that way. And so in conclusion, me knowing the amount of people I know who have come here as refugees, or people who have come here illegally, or people who have pursued illegal marriages, so on and so forth. I think when it comes to fixing any type of situation, especially immigration, where real families are involved, there will not be an easy way or a nice way to go about fixing any of this. It just doesn't exist. I believe what's definitely going to be highlighted, and I do expect to see more situations like this, are people whose status was illegal, but outside of their status weren't really involved in any illegal activity. Because it's one thing when we see the videos of the criminals who they're taking to Venezuela and they can prove like this person has done this and this and that and that. I don't sit there and go, let that person loose into the streets. Right? I don't think that. But I do think along with that, there will be these type of situations. And I think it will happen more and more. But to give you guys some perspective, to an extent, a lot of immigrants who are in this situation right now where they've overstayed their visa, this is their worst nightmare. And they, at the time of making the decision, were hoping for the best, but they were definitely 100% aware of the decision that they were making and that they were putting themselves in the position of being more at risk of being deported with their illegal status. Guys, of course, I'm curious to know what you think. We're going to check out some of these comments. Top comment here says he doesn't regret voting for Trump. He regrets that his wife was picked up by ICE. Somebody else who says this is what he voted for. Here's somebody else who says, oh my, Camilla, and she posted on Facebook mocking the illegals being deported. Karma. Somebody else who says passport bros are crying, I think. Or passport bros, that's a funny comment. Passport bros are only crying if they married somebody who they knew is here illegally. Find Out has entered the chat. Somebody else who says he voted for what was right, not to save his wife. I mean, once again, my conclusion is I don't think there will ever be an easy way to solve this problem and situation. And I think anybody who thinks there is an easy way to solve the situation where this type of stuff doesn't happen is really living in a delusional place. Guys, leave your comments down below. Of course, I'm curious to know what you think. Listen, speaking of being legally married, if you're a man who values marriage in our modern day, don't forget to head over to fathershaverights.com to make sure that you're protecting yourself legally and accessing the #1 guide to drafting a solid and legally binding prenuptial agreement with offer code REVIEW. And you can get step-by-step walkthrough of how to draft a solid and legally binding prenuptial agreement with expert attorneys. Appreciate you guys. Till next time, I'm out. Peace.